Hi folks, this is Tony for AMinuteToMidnight.com, and in this video I want to outline some important things about the move towards a global religion, a new world order, alien disclosure, and how all of these things fit together in a great deception or strong delusion. I do hope that you will take this video seriously and that you won't be one of those ones who's fooled by the strong delusion that is coming upon the earth, and many people will be fooled by it. And I hope to outline in this video some of the things that you should look out for. There are so many false religions masquerading as truth, or so many threads of the false religion masquerading as truth. But if we look at John 14:6, Jesus said unto him, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man cometh unto the Father but by me. One of those false religions based on lies is Theosophy. And yet they say there is no religion higher than truth, as you can see on the Wellington, New Zealand building of the Theosophical Society. Now, the Theosophical Society is not a big religion in terms of the numbers of people that you think are involved in it, but the influence of Theosophy has gone far and wide and influences so much today in the world, particularly the United Nations and the New Age movement which came out of Theosophy. You can see that the symbols of Theosophy contain at the top the Sanskrit word Om, which is, basically a sacred word in their old traditions. Then below that you see the whirling cross, which we know the Nazis used and called it a swastika. Then you've got the Ouroboros snake, the snake swallowing its tail. In Eastern religions, quite the opposite to Christianity, they actually view the serpent as an agent of healing. And you also see that portrayed in things like the medical profession, where they use a caduceus or two snakes entwined around a staff. It's a pretty big distortion of the truth, really. Then you've got the two triangles, like thaumaturgic triangles, forming a hexagram with a very obvious as above, so below pattern, which you can see in the different colours of those triangles there. You've got the Ankar cross, which is the cross with a round circle on the top that came from ancient Egypt. And then, of course, their motto, there is no religion higher than truth. Now, what Theosophy does is it pretends to include Christianity into its belief system, but it's a very distorted Christ consciousness form of Christianity that has nothing to do with the truth of the Bible. And basically the Theosophical concept is that every particle of matter, like everything that exists, has consciousness in it, and that every spark of consciousness functions through a material form. So the material and the spirit are mutually dependent, according to Theosophists. Basically, everything in the motto of the Theosophical Society points to their belief that all the elements have mutual connections between spirit and matter, and that they are expressions of the divine source, which is what you see with the crowning Om at the top of their motto. Okay, now quoting from the website of theosophy.nz, Theosophia refers to a divine wisdom that is a state of consciousness in which the sage or mystic goes beyond his or her mind and gets a direct supraconceptual perception of truth. This is the primary meaning of Theosophy. And further down it says, the part of us that is divine, the process becomes more and more receptive to these theosophical insights as a spiritual path or journey. And of course they believe in reincarnation. As you can see here, for humans, evolution is a spiritual growth through a seemingly endless chain of experience within a cycle of births, deaths, and rebirths. The belief in reincarnation has no basis in Scripture, in the Bible, therefore it does not belong in Christianity, and we can see in Hebrews 9:27 it says, and as it is appointed unto men once to die, but after this the judgment. No endless cycle of births and rebirths, folks. I'm not going to spend any great time on discussing the Theosophical Society, but it's important to mention the following, that on May 3rd, 1878, in a prospectus issued to explain the origin, plan, and aim of the Theosophical Society, to the pen of Helena Petrovna Blavatsky and drafted by a Colonel H.S. Olcott, was stated this, just a very short piece I'll read. The Society teaches and expects its fellows to personally exemplify the highest morality and religious aspiration, now get this, to oppose the materialism of science and every form of dogmatic theology, especially the Christian, which the chiefs of the Society regard as particularly pernicious, to make known among Western nations the long-suppressed facts about Oriental religious philosophies, their ethics, chronology, esotericism, symbolism, to counteract as far as possible the efforts of missionaries to delude the so-called heathen and pagans as to the real origin and dogma of Christianity. And so on it goes. Basically, Blavatsky was saying straight out there that the goal is to subvert Christianity. The reason why I felt it was important to mention that is because Madame Blavatsky was a huge influence on Alice A. Bailey, who founded in 1922 the Lucifer Publishing Company, which is now known today as the Lucis Trust, and it is centered in the United Nations. So the Theosophical Society was begun by Madame Blavatsky. So if she's the grandmother of the New Age movement, well, the mother of the New Age movement would be Alice A. Bailey. Alice A. Bailey wrote 24 books, and she also penned what is known as the Great Invocation, which I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'll just read a section of it here where it says, "From the centre which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth." Take note, the word plan, and it's in capital letters. The Great Invocation was penned by Bailey in 1945, and it's become the mantra for the New Age movement. Okay, now remember that Alice Bailey founded the Lucis Trust, or originally it was called the Lucifer Publishing Company. This is on the Lucis Trust website. The hierarchy of light. Throughout time, the idea of a group of wise and enlightened beings working behind the scenes to guide our planet has been conveyed in spiritual teachings, in literature and myth. The group, known by various names such as the spiritual hierarchy, the masters of wisdom, and the elder brothers, has ever come forth in times of crisis, and today will be no different. Great teachers such as Socrates, Sri Krishna, Muhammad, the Buddha, and the Christ have all been members of the hierarchy. The Lucis Trust is centered at the United Nations in New York, and obviously from there you can see all they view Jesus as is an ascended master along with the others. He's not the only begotten Son of God or the only one we find salvation through. So to this divine consciousness cult of the New Age and the Lucis Trust, for example, there is no absolutes, and so they can embrace gods of ancient Egypt like Horus, and the whole as above so below philosophy is very pervasive throughout, where everything that is above is reflected below. The beliefs of the occult, and in the Lucis Trust and the teachings of Alice A. Bailey, this is particularly evident. And in her book Externalization of the Hierarchy, Bailey calls as above so below an old occult truism. I'm not going to go into the origins of as above so below, as I've covered it in other videos on the Emerald Tablet and also the Book of the Zohar. But we are seeing as above so below displayed prominently in churches like Bethel and also Hillsong and Planet Shakers and others, and really the origins of it is dubious, and you'll find the term being used in the Message Bible as well. In the Lord's Prayer, the Message translation of that we see as above, so below, staring you right in the face. Alice Bailey's book, The Externalization of the Hierarchy, is basically a blueprint for the New World Order, and it would appear very much that the United Nations has followed it as the blueprint for a New World Order and for a new religion, of which Bailey speaks a lot, and it's very obvious that George Bush Sr. was using this as the basis for his New World Order speeches.
Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Page 102 of The Externalization of the Hierarchy lays out 9 premises for the New World Order, and they include number 2, which is that the New World Order must be appropriate to a world which has passed through a destructive crisis and to a humanity which is badly shattered by the experience. Page 56 tells us that New World Order will be brought into expression by the play of spiritual energy, and page 103 tells us that it should develop in humanity a sense of divinity. So that's that whole that humans are divine kind of thing. Page 104, the New World Order will be confronted with many problems, and they will be solved by right educational processes. This is where you get your Common Core education ideas and so on. And she says they fall roughly into 4 categories: the racial problem, the economic problem, the problem of government, and the religious problems. So they intend to educate people into their way of thinking, the New World Order's way of thinking. And where it gets even more sinister, I think, is that the hierarchy that Bailey talks about, she calls them interplanetary beings who offer their help at the time, and this was talking about in 1936, but you can see that it'll be the same thing that they're still waiting for, the guidance of the great ones. And the spirit of peace which is invoked is an interplanetary agent of great power whose cooperation has been promised if all aspirants and disciples can cooperate to break through the shell of separation and hatred which holds our planet in thrall. That's page 14 and 15. Page 19, she tells you which groups are negative to the New World Order, the ones they basically need to get rid of according to the occult hierarchy, which she had, of course, her books channeled through spirits of these so-called ascended masters or occult hierarchy. But in that group of negative ones, you find churches and religions, and in the positive, you find esotericists, aspirants, and occultists, and former Illuminists who were groomed by the Lucius Trust, such as Carolyn Hamlet, have said that within the Great Plan there is what they also have called a compassionate plan. The compassionate plan is to basically kill off all Christians and people that don't, the Neanderthals that won't follow the New World religion, so they can be reincarnated and have another go at it. So at some future point, they will be able to justify killing Christians and so on who won't take the mark of the beast or follow the New World Order by saying that they are going to be better off anyway, killed so they can be reincarnated and more advanced the next time round. So that's how they will be able to justify it. I have to say that one thing that really bothers me is the group of people who seem to be nice people and are forwarding an agenda that says that things are going to get better, things are going to change, and there's usually some sort of alien disclosure for the positive with these people and a rounding up of the cabal and so on. And I'm talking about people like Benjamin Fulford, David Icke, and David Wilcock and others who have a certain amount of truth in what they say and yet a deceptive agenda. And I'm going to play a few clips here from David Wilcock to illustrate what I'm talking about.
There is a living consciousness field, there is a living awareness in the universe that is love and that is intelligent. These things will transform society. Knowledge is power. It's a seed of information that cannot be suppressed. And by knowing that these things are true, I am constantly ignited with the passion to want that information out there to the public, because when enough people know about this, we will change the world.
Okay, so that sounds good, doesn't it? But it could very easily have come from Alice Bailey's book, The Externalization of the Hierarchy.
All this stuff is going to get stopped. The fluoridation of the water, attacking the pineal gland and causing autism to get worse. There's so many things that are wrong right now that are going to get turned around when we finally get to this point. So I know it's hard waiting for this to happen. It is the darkest hour before the dawn. Millennials might think that there's no hope, that they're never going to be able to repay their college loans, they're never going to get a good job, they're never going to have that dream of the 1950s. I would disagree. I think that we are going to go through a real amazing economic reboot, and that on the other side of this, we're going to have a much, much happier and more prosperous life in this civilization.
So Wilcock is appealing to people's desire for hope that there will be change and it'll be a good future. But what this is going to do is actually play into the agenda of the Luciferian elite and ultimately their man of sin, who will be the Antichrist, and his coming onto the scene.
That this is a spiritual war, and we on Earth are really like proxies involved in a struggle between different types of extraterrestrials. And both types of extraterrestrials, both classes, the good ones and the bad ones, have the authority to interfere with our thought processes, to nudge us in different ways. The good ones, which we would think of as like angels, will help us, know who's calling on the phone before we pick it up without caller ID. We feel something. They help us to meet the right people at the right time. We get synchronicity. We get sudden flashes of insight, and then we find something we didn't think we were going to find. The bad ones, if we're starting to become angry, they will send us energy to make us more angry. If we become fearful, they'll make us more afraid. If we become jealous, they'll make us more jealous. Selfish, controlling, manipulative, they'll strengthen those things. Both sides of this battle, both of the extraterrestrial sides, the negative and the positive, can contact certain groups on Earth that are, or individuals who are highly focused on that side of the fence. So the Cabal, the Illuminati side, does have negative extraterrestrials working with them, and this is a very common element. It's the reptilian aspect, certain ETs that look like reptilians. We get into that in Above Majestic quite a bit. The positive side doesn't really necessarily work with the government. I mean, the Alliance does seem to have some contact with them, but not as much as you might think. And so they will have, a lot of these angelic beings are contacting private people like myself, and they're working in a very subtle way where they're seeding these various pieces of information through people who don't even realize that they're receiving angelic contact.
Notice how many cults start off with angelic visitations. I'm thinking the Mormons, and of course there are many others. And here we have it again. And of course Alice Bailey and her being channeled information by ascended masters or angels. And I am reminded of a couple of scriptures, Galatians 1, 6 and 9. I marvel that you are turning away so soon from him who called you in the grace of Christ to a different gospel, which is not another. But there are some who trouble you and want to pervert the gospel of Christ. But even if we, or an angel from heaven, preach any other gospel to you than what we have preached to you, let him be accursed. As we have said before, so now I say again, if anyone preaches any other gospel to you than what you have received, let him be accursed. And what we are hearing from David Wilcock is another gospel. And then 2 Corinthians 11, 13 and 16, for such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Christ, and no wonder, for Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. Therefore, it is no great thing if his ministers also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness, whose end will be according to their works. And, I mean, David Wilcock seems like a nice guy, but he is preaching another gospel, and do not follow any angelic visitation that does not have Christ crucified and him being the only salvation as central to what they are proclaiming.
So, the attack against religion is an attack by the dark side because, remember, these are spiritual beings that, in a sense, they're flesh and blood, okay? But they live more in a spiritual arena. And both sides require spirituality of the people to be steering in their direction in order for them to do well. So the negative side literally feeds on fear, anger, selfishness, jealousy, anxiety, pain, sadness. When we feel those things, they literally can soak it up. They call it loosh. It's a very important point. Literally, some of these negative ETs will park their ships cloaked over battlefields where lots of people are dying. They'll soak up this energy, and they literally become more powerful from the energy. It literally strengthens them. It makes them healthier. So they have designed, the negative side has designed the earth as a fear farm.
So notice this is one thing that's common with a lot of these guys, like David Icke and Wilcock and some of these others, that we're seeing angels and demons are not just spiritual or ultra-dimensional, they're extraterrestrials. And this will play into the disclosure, which will be the Great Delusion, I believe the Great Deception that is coming, that's spoken of in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 9 to 12. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan, with all power, signs, and lying wonders, with all unrighteous deception among those who perish, because they did not receive the love of the truth, that they might be saved. And for this reason God will send them strong delusion, that they should believe the lie. Okay, now I'm hoping you'll be able to see through this deception. Remember, Alice A. Bailey was a Luciferian, and her books are full of what is known as the plan. Now listen to David Wilcock and his version of the plan, and see that I believe they are both one and the same plan.
And this, again, the Korean War, for those of you who don't really have a full grasp of the history, this was in the mid-1950s now, okay? This led to the creation of something called the plan, which over time became a 5-inch thick binder. And the plan was intended to disclose to the people that were involved in doing it how they could actually defeat the cabal. How could they overthrow the cabal? Eisenhower appears to have been aware of this plan and was partly involved in drawing it up, which is why he did his infamous warning about the military-industrial complex at the end of his speech. Kennedy goes into office from the beginning, working for the alliance, from the beginning, working to try to do the plan. And the Cuban Missile Crisis literally was intended to work. The cabal was trying to nuke America, and it was only through the work of the alliance that that plan was stopped, because the cabal was going to have a first strike capability out of Cuba to hit the U.S. with missiles before the U.S. missiles could get to the Soviet Union. So that was not BS, okay? Where Kennedy really got into trouble was when he tried to nationalize the assets of the U.S. Treasury, which you'd say, well, wait a minute, David, aren't they already nationalized? The Treasury was trying to sell off all their silver. And what Kennedy did is to stop the sale of silver and to issue silver-backed money that was presidentially issued from the Treasury, not the Federal Reserve, which, as we know, is not a federal and has no reserve, right? This money was going to be Treasury notes and not under the control of international bankers, and so that's the circumstances leading to his assassination.
So there's a certain amount of truth in what Wilcock shares there about Kennedy and the Treasury notes and so on, and the Cuban Missile Crisis, though I have heard from Carolyn Hamlet, who was told by Sam Skemp, who was an Illuminist, that Kennedy was killed because he cost them a lot of money over the Cuban missile situation. But it should be taken into account that the Kennedy bloodline is actually an Illuminati bloodline, and you'll find that in Fritz Springmeier's book, The 13 Bloodlines of the Illuminati. So JFK was actually born into an Illuminati family.
The alliance has been working over and over again to try to get disclosure. They were going to use Reagan, and Reagan was going to come clean. And then before he could, they tried to shoot him, and then Brady stumbled and took the bullet instead. That would have hit Reagan if Brady hadn't have fallen the way he did. So, a lot of weird stuff. The whole thing that Reagan was trying to do with Gorbachev for glasnost and perestroika to denuclearize, that was not something the cabal wanted. That was Reagan working on his own, okay? The Iran-Contra Scandal, 1987, was the alliance trying to destroy the cabal, right? Because you find out that they're selling arms to Iran.
It suits people like Wilcock to believe that Ronald Reagan was working against the Illuminati and that he was going to bring disclosure about aliens and so on. But it must be remembered that Reagan actually attended Bohemian Grove in 1967, as you can see in this picture here, and also that he has been photographed displaying the devil horn sign, and many people believe that he also was part of the Illuminati.
And so I'm looking at the Q stuff, and they are seemingly prognosticating that a whole lot of information is getting ready to be dumped in a data dump. And it talks about the indictments, the sealed indictments. It's got stuff with the FISA memos, stuff on the Five Eyes, which are the 5 major countries that are in this cabal, and their intelligence and surveillance apparatus. And so I would expect that in 2019, at the very least, we will be seeing the aftermath or the result of major data dumps taking place, major mind-blowing releases of new information. And I think we're also going to see actual disclosure.
David Wilcock believes that QAnon is part of the alliance to take down the evil cabal, and that the Justice Department has now 63,000 supposed sealed indictments, which are to be delivered at the time when Donald Trump is ready to take down the deep state, and so on. And that list of sealed indictments just keeps growing like Pinocchio's nose. The followers of QAnon are expecting a great storm when all the indictments are unsealed and the deep state and the enemies of the people are basically brought to justice, and they believe that Donald Trump is playing some sort of 4D chess with the globalists, and that really he's not under investigation by Mueller and so on, the Russian investigation, but that really it's them that are investigating the dark side, the deep state and so on, and that it's all just a clever plan by Donald Trump and the alliance. The whole 4D chess by Donald Trump is pretty ridiculous and has nothing of any substance to back it up, and neither does the fact that QAnon's supposed predictions have failed to come true time and time again, and the latest one being on December the 5th, where the supposed storm was meant to be unleashed and it didn't happen. But it's almost as ridiculous now that the QAnon followers, many of them are saying that the QAnon being wrong, the predictions being wrong, are part of the grand design to fool people so that the public will be misled and the storm will happen when they're least expecting it. So rather than going, hey, QAnon was wrong and this was a load of rubbish, they're just saying, no, it's all part of the ploy and the plot. I believe QAnon is a deliberate psyop.
Just because you get a briefing doesn't mean it's going to come true. And there's many, many things that the alliance conveyed that I really hoped were going to happen, and they've been delayed and delayed and delayed. But I'm really glad that they have created Q, that they've created sealed indictments. They're doing this all legally, procedurally, so that when it comes out, it's not going to look like a coup. It's not going to look like the military overthrew the United States government. It's part of the correct function of the three branches of the U.S. government, legislative, judicial, and administrative, and that we're getting this all to happen through a legal, certifiable way that nobody's going to be able to dispute.
Now, I do believe that there may well be arrests and so forth, and that some of the bad guys may be sacrificed by the powers that be that run this conspiracy, and that it may well be that it's kind of a ploy to give some plausibility to the people believing that they've gained back power, whilst really what it will be doing is actually solidifying power for the demonic New World Order, whatever you want to call it, and that it will lead to the bringing in of the Antichrist and the global religion. It's highly likely that the Federal Reserve will be sacrificed and no longer exist, but ultimately this too will be to centralize power for a one world government and a new currency system.
You know, but believe me, the alliance is going to succeed, and these are just some of the multiple events where the alliance almost made it, and then it didn't quite happen, and they had to keep working. But now, with the sealed indictments and with what we're having happen with Q, I mean, they have a lot of people on this thing, and it is building up to some really stunning public event that's going to be happening not too far from now, if we get lucky, and I hope we do. They keep trying to do this, they keep getting thrown off. It's a fight to the death with the cabal, but I do believe they will succeed.
Okay folks, now let's just briefly go back to the Lucis Trust website and that article about the hierarchy of light, and listen to this from the article. The hierarchy works ceaselessly and could be compared to a great army working for world upliftment. They are the inspiration for the major changes being implemented in the world, yet they take no credit for the work that they do. Through the process of spiritual impression, they influence those leaders and progressive thinkers whose minds and hearts are receptive to the new and forward-looking incoming ideas. Their work extends to all aspects of our planetary life: politics, education, religion, art, science, psychology, and economics. Now note, remember the hierarchy are spiritual, demonic, fallen angel hierarchy, we would call them as Christians, and note that there are seven aspects of planetary life that they supposedly influence. Now, compare that with the Christian Dominionist movement, the Seven Mountains Mandate, where they have 7 mountains that they supposedly must take control over before Jesus returns, and they are education, religion, family, business, government, military, arts, entertainment, and media. Note the very close similarity to the goals of the supposed hierarchy and the Lucis Trust, and put 2 and 2 together and realize that something is amiss here. Note that the spiritual advisors for Donald Trump, and particularly people like Lance Wallnau and also the prophets like Mark Taylor, are 7 Mountains Dominionist followers. And I do not believe that it is scriptural at all, but the fact that they, who are spiritually advising Trump, believe that, while at the same time you have Illuminists at the Lucis Trust promoting a similar agenda, and David Wilcock and others like him being cheerleaders for it.
I got it.
Oh my gosh.
Oh.
What the hell?
That strange light in the sky is one of 1,100 UFO sightings in Canada last year. According to the annual survey released by Ufology Research of Manitoba, there are at least 3 such sightings in the country every day.
UFO reports are still a thing. People are reporting them in greater and greater numbers every year.
Montreal is Canada's UFO capital, with 74 sightings reported last year, followed by Toronto, then Vancouver. It's not that these cities are on an extraterrestrial highway. It's a matter of population, says the report's author.
If a tree's falling in the forest, you need somebody to hear it. So if there's a UFO in the sky, the more people around to see it, the more reports you get.
Listen, people, we may very well see some sort of alien disclosure in the future, but it will all be based on deception and upon lies.
Was anybody above us that passed us like 30 seconds ago?
Number 71 Papa Golf negative.
Okay. Stop this. A UFO.
Like it says in 2 Thessalonians 2:9, that is, the one whose coming is in accord with the activity of Satan with all power and signs and false wonders. In Revelation chapter 13 and 14, he performs great signs so that he even makes fire come down out of heaven to the earth in the presence of men, and he deceives those who dwell on the earth because of the signs. So I think this could very well be part of the end time deception. In fact, I'm pretty sure it will play some role in the end time deception. It's very interesting, I think, that Werner von Braun, who was an illuminist and an aerospace engineer and space architect, was a leading figure in the development of rocket technology in Germany in World War II, and basically the father of rocket and space technology in the United States, said the following in an interview with Carol Rosin before he died. He died in 1977. But I will just read part of this. What was most interesting to me was a repetitive sentence that he said to me over and over again, and that was the strategy that was being used to educate the public and decision makers, and the scare tactics, the spin that was being put on the weapon system, and that was how we identify an enemy. The enemy, at first, he said, the enemy against whom we're going to build a space-based weapon system. First, the Russians are going to be considered the enemy. Then terrorists would be identified, and that was soon to follow. Then we were going to identify third world crazies. We now call them nations of concern. The next enemy was asteroids, and against asteroids we're going to build space-based weapons. And the funniest one of all was that against what he called aliens, extraterrestrials. That would be the final card. And over and over and over during the 4 years that I knew him and was giving his speeches for him, he would bring up that last card. And remember, Carol, the last card is the alien card. We're going to have to build space-based weapons against aliens. And all of it, he said, is a lie. And now I just want to read a short section from a book by Billy Crone, UFOs, The Great Last Days Deception, and this is quoting John Ankenberg. In light of the message given by the UFO entities, how credible is it to think that literally thousands of genuine extraterrestrials would fly millions or billions of light years simply to teach New Age philosophy, deny Christianity, and support the occult? Why would they do this with the preponderance of such activity already occurring on this planet? And why would the entities actually possess and inhabit people just like demons do if they were really advanced extraterrestrials? Why would they consistently lie about the things which we know are true? And why would they purposely deceive their contacts? Very good question. It's because I believe they are demonic and not extraterrestrials from another planet, but probably ultra-dimensional beings. I think it's highly possible that with the occurrence of today's technology, Project Bluebeam, holographic technology, voice of God technology, and advances in actual nuts and bolts craft technology, that they could pull off a great deception, a demonic deception with humans and the fallen angels and their technology in the end times. And many, many people are likely to be fooled by it. Well, folks, I hope you found this video helpful. I know I've covered a lot of information in it. Don't forget to visit our website, minute2midnight.com, and we put all our articles and shows and videos there on our website, and we do run a Minute to Midnight by donations, and thank you for those that do help us out by donating. That's it for this video. We'll catch you with another Minute to Midnight show episode and more videos in the very near future. Until then, God bless. Have a great week and stay safe.